Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 there will not be plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly.' Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him." This is the word of the Lord. Praise be to God.
I am Jacob, Abram, Isaac, Jacob. Names. Abraham, father of nations. Isaac, laughter. Jacob, grabber. The farm is so empty. It's so quiet here. Up in Canaan. I sent my sons down to Egypt. It's the 2nd year of drought, and they've gone down there, and they've taken Benjamin with them. The only son I truly have, Benjamin. Lord, please bring Benjamin back safely. There are really only 3 people I truly love. Beloved Rachel, she's passed away. Dear Joseph, and he's been killed. And now they've taken Benjamin away from me. Grief, pain, what a struggle. Poor Rachel. When she was giving birth to Benjamin, she passed to Jehovah. How I miss Rachel. How I miss her. Oh Lord, what a struggle. What a struggle. Sometimes I ask myself, was my life a mistake? Things have gone so badly recently. Look at the drought. Cattle dying. What a loss. But God promised to my grandfather Abraham that we would have descendants as the stars in the sky. He repeated the promise to my father Isaac, and then to me. But look at what I've got here. Just Zilpah and Bilhah, the servant girls, some grandchildren. But oh, Rachel has gone. Joseph has gone. Will I ever see Benjamin again? I must hold on to God's promise. But it's such a struggle. Jacob, Grabber. I ask you, who would give their son the name Grabber? So I showed them. You see, what happened was when my mother Rebecca was giving birth, God gave her a prophecy that the two twins in her womb would form two nations, but that the older would serve the younger. So there I was being born, and I was the younger. And as I was coming out of the birth canal, I was clutching onto, grabbing Esau's ankle. So they called me Grabber. Well, that's what I've been. I grabbed Esau's ankle. I grabbed Esau's birthright. And with the help of my mother, I grabbed Esau's blessing. You see, in our culture, the oldest gets 2/3 of the property, and that's promised to him as a blessing. There's always been sibling rivalry. It's strange, you know. There we were together in my mother's womb, so close, and after birth, so far apart. Oh, Esau. Esau and I never got on. It was like sandpaper. You know, he was a man of the fields, stronger than me, and he loved his hunting. He always went hunting, shooting the game and bringing it back to my father Isaac, and Isaac loved him. Isaac had no time for me. So I just kept to myself with my mother in the tents. I have a smooth skin, and he has a very hairy skin. And so we were such opposites, Esau and I. Jacob and Esau. Well, I showed them. When it came to the blessing, when my father was old, poor dad, blind, half dead, really confused. You know, I confess to say that my mother and I used to stand and at a distance laugh behind his back. After all, his name was Laughter, so my mother said, Jacob, come here, let's make a plan. Because I know that you're the one who should get the blessing. So she arranged that the best meat from the game would be given, and I would pretend that I was Esau. This is what we did. I put on special skins with hair. My father felt me and thought I was Esau, and he gave me such a beautiful blessing, full of grace, full of bounty. He thought he was speaking to Esau. I grabbed it. Esau came in, and he was devastated. Father, please give me some blessing. And the blessing he gave was more like a curse. Well, you can imagine how Esau felt. Esau was so mad, Esau was so furious that I had to avoid him from that day on. And eventually my mother said, go north and meet with your family up there until Esau's anger subsides. This is what I did. I went north, and there I met cousin Laban and the family. Rebecca's family. And a beautiful thing happened. I met Rachel. If you could only have seen beautiful Rachel. Beautiful black flowing locks, wonderful features, beautiful figure, and very gracious. I fell in love with her, and she with me. So I asked her father Laban, could I marry Rachel? And initially he said yes, and then he changed the scheme, and he really got me into a trap. And the night we married, I thought I was sleeping with my beloved Rachel, and in the morning, plain Jane, Leah, came out of the tent. What a shock. Well, what can a man do? He said, work the marriage week off, and if you work for 7 years, you can have Rachel. Well, did I work for 7 years? And then my troubles really began. Leah was the most fertile woman in the area. And Rachel couldn't fall pregnant. And I was caught between these two wives. So Leah has 4 sons. Bam, 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 bam. From Reuben to Judah. And poor Rachel is watching her oldest sister. And the jealousy is building up. And her anger. And she comes to me and says, Jacob, do something. And then she pushes her servant Bilhah on me. Well, what can a man do in such circumstances? Bam, bam. Bilhah has 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Then Leah becomes jealous because she can't fall pregnant again. And so she comes to me and says, Jacob, do something. And she pushes Zilpah onto me. Well, what can a man do in such circumstances? Bam, bam. And soon we're 10. And finally, God answered Rachel's prayer. And she gave birth to a boy whom we called Joseph. From his birth, I knew that he was special. And as he grew, he developed a wonderful physique. He grew very wise. He seemed to understand dreams. And he was a beautiful young boy. As I've always said, he had the beauty of Rachel and the intelligence of his father. Joseph grew up, and he never fitted in with the other sons. It was tragic. But the time came when God told me to go south again, and I left Laban's family and took Rachel and Leah and Joseph and all of them with me. And we were heading south again. I was very anxious. And as we got closer to the land of Canaan, a scouting group came and said, Esau's coming with an army. Could this be the end of this family? Surely not. God had promised us to have this great progeny. So that night I prayed and I asked Jehovah to save us from the anger of my brother. But a wonderful thing happened. There at the ford Jabbok, in the night, the angel of the Lord came to me. He met with me. And he entered into a wrestling match. It was a mixture of an emotional and a spiritual and a physical wrestling match. And while I tried to win, he would not win. It was strange and wonderful. And so there in the middle of the whole wrestling match came a word from God. He first of all touched my hip. And there, as he touched my hip, he made me limp. And the limp was devastating. That limp has stayed with me. And so, each of us, him, God the angel, and me, Jacob, wrestled. And slowly we struggled to the end of the night. And in our last clinch, God said to me, your name is no longer Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and have struggled with men. And I asked him to bless me, and oh, did he bless me. The joy and the wonder that came into my heart. He changed me that night. And he humbled me. You know, it's so true that if anyone is in relationship to Jehovah God, the old has gone, Jacob has gone, and the new Israel has come. Well, I called that place Peniel, the face of God, because I met God face to face. And off we went into the next day, and there comes Esau. But God had changed his heart too, and his heart was tender towards me. We came together and we hugged. Perhaps it was the limp that caused him to soften his heart. But God answered my prayer, and we had a great reconciliation. What a wonderful blessing. Face to face with God, and face to face with my brother. Well, the whole family settled again in Canaan, and there things went very well. But then, two great tragedies happened. First of all, Rachel gave birth to Benjamin and died in the process. My beloved Rachel died. Oh, how I miss her. Yes, there's Leah. But Rachel, my beautiful, gone. Perhaps to make up for that, I drew Joseph even closer to me, and I gave him this special coat with many, many ornamental colors on it. He looked so handsome and good in it. But it caused a lot of jealousy in the family. One day, I told Joseph to go out and look for his brothers in the fields. And he never came back. They brought this ornamental coat back, and his blood was on it. He'd been killed by wild animals. Joseph was gone. My precious boy, Joseph. Rachel gone. Joseph gone. And here I am in this drought, and Benjamin has gone. Oh, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have mercy on me. And please bring back Benjamin safely. What a struggle this all is. What pain. Oh, whew. What a struggle this life is. Joseph is alive, and he's governor of Egypt. My boy Joseph, governor of Egypt. God has kept his promise. God has kept his promise to me, and God has kept his promise to Joseph, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, God, the promise keeper. Well, let me explain. Joseph was never killed by wild animals. His brothers sold him to the Midianite traders, and they took him and sold him to Potiphar, the captain of the guard in Egypt. And there Joseph, the beauty of Rachel, the intelligence of Jacob, rose to prominence in Potiphar's household. And there Joseph became the chief steward, looking after the whole estate. Unfortunately, Potiphar's wife fell in love with Joseph. And you can understand that. Beautiful, intelligent. But Joseph, my boy Joseph, resisted. He took the moral ground. He remained a virgin. He refused to go in with Potiphar's wife. She was relentless. And eventually she got so angry that she blamed him for rape, persuaded Potiphar, and poor Joseph was thrown in prison. My poor boy Joseph. But God was working. God was working his plan. And there in prison, he met the butler and the baker from Pharaoh's household, who Pharaoh had thrown in prison. And as time went by, he did some dream work for the butler and the baker. And those dreams came true. The baker had his head chopped off, as predicted. And the butler went back to Pharaoh's court to be the chief cupbearer. Time passed by. Joseph languished in prison. And then a strange thing happened. God gave Pharaoh a special prophetic dream. And this dream was fulfilled in time. But the Pharaoh couldn't understand this dream, and he was frustrated. And at that point, the cupbearer remembered the dream that Joseph had interpreted and told Pharaoh. Pharaoh called Joseph in. Joseph came, and he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. It was a dream that forecast 7 beautiful, fruitful agricultural years, and then 7 years of drought. So Joseph said, "You appoint a wise leader to manage the gathering of all the grain in the 7 years of plenty." And guess what? Yes, Pharaoh appointed Joseph. And Joseph became governor of Egypt, exalted from the prison to the highest place. What a beautiful thing God did. But Joseph was always faithful to God at every turn. Well, here we are now, in the land of Goshen. And for the first time in my life, I have Joseph and Benjamin with me for the next many years. You know, Joseph struggled to forgive his brothers when he first met them. He played cat and mouse with them. But eventually, he had the grace to forgive his brothers for what they did. And so when we all gathered together, and there I met Joseph, you should have seen the party. How I hugged my boy Joseph. How he hugged me, we wept over one another. Tears of joy. God had brought peace to my family. Peace to Esau. Peace between Joseph and his brothers. God is the God of shalom, peace. And he will do it again and again. How I thank God. For he, through the struggle of Joseph's life, worked good. Through all the struggles of Joseph, for his wonderful purpose. He is the one who works all things for our good and the good of his people, Israel. O God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I worship you. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, thank you. For you are the God of shalom, peace. You are the God of promise. And I see with my eye that you will raise up a king from Judah. For the scepter will not pass from Judah, nor the staff from beneath his feet, until he becomes the obedience of the nation. Praise God.